Hi, my name is Ian Furser with VP Toolkit. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the VP Toolkit Ctrl App. We're going to be focusing on the AR features and working through an AR stage calibration. We're going to want to get started by going to the AR tab. And then at this point, I generally like to do a scan by showing the app a wide of my environment. This way it can scan the different surfaces of the environment and get an idea of everything that we'll want to use to put an object on. So once it's done scanning the environment, you'll see that different surfaces show up as this little texture here. You want to make sure that any surface that you're going to actually put something on, that it is level with that surface. You can see that it's trying to put a plane in the air here. And that can actually go underneath the bed. Now if we go over to a desk, you can see that it will create a plane on top of this desk here. So what I want to do is I want to recenter my AR tracking as well as my virtual stage, which we're going to calibrate with the same center point first. And then later I'll show you a way of creating more of a desk setup where we're using a different tracking system with the same 0 point, but then have a little desktop version of our virtual stage. So we'll want to make sure that the app is registering the correct ground plane. It looks pretty locked in there. And I'm just going to select the plane. And then this little L mark here that I have is where I'm actually going to recenter my Vive Mars later in a more professional setup. But first, I want to use the Android app for a little bit of previs and use the AR tracking instead of having to break out a camera and set up the Vive Mars. So I'm going to select that spot. And you can see that the red is x-axis. That is our forward. And this is designed to actually go this way towards my screen. So I'm going to want to turn this calibration object. If I use 2 fingers and I slide to the left, if you go click on info, you can actually see some of the ability to move things around. And then I just want to make sure that this is lined up correctly, so I can just grab it with 1 finger and move it a little bit. Now, once I have an object in the right place, I can just hit recenter tracking, and that will place my tracking center there. This is just for the AR app. And then I'm also going to recenter the AR stage. Now you can see an AR representation of our Freston camera, which is just floating there. And now we've calibrated and recentered our stage. Now we can get into setting up the AR tracking. First, I'm going to set up the AR tracking for just the Unreal Engine editor, and then we're going to actually use it in a workflow with an end display node. If you click on these 3 little dots next to the AR tracking, you'll see some network information. This will be the master end display node in your cluster. Now, if you're doing this on an indie setup, that might be the same machine as your editor. But in this case, I'm actually going to be using the same machine. But on most stages, this will be the render node that is leading your end display cluster. So for right now, I'm actually going to deselect end display and then enable the AR tracking. Now we want to go back to our settings and make sure that we're connected to the plugin. And then we can go into our in-camera tab. And then at the top right, we have the tracking. So first I'm going to switch it back to live link. and then switch it to Control, enable and disable this. And now we have tracking live in the editor. Another thing that you'll see, and we'll dive into it a little bit more, is there will be some camera markers that are floating around in augmented reality. They are going to be in the same placement as the camera markers in your virtual environment or your editor. I'm going to quickly go to the Locations tab so that my location markers also populate. So these location markers will show up in the correct placement of our stage. And I'm going to go back to the AR tab. And just for fun and to show you, you can also enable and disable the light/dark mode, which will switch all of the 3D icons into a different style. Now, if you want to replace your object and then recenter your stage somewhere else, you can hit the reset button on the left side. And then now let's place the virtual stage on the desk here. So I'll select the desk plane and then place my actor there. I'm going to just turn it a little bit so that it's facing forward. And then I'm going to hit Recenter AR Stage. Now, it's going to be pretty big, so if you go down to Virtual Stage Scale, you can scale this down to be more of a desktop position. So now we can actually see all of our virtual cameras and our frosting camera, which is being controlled by the tablet on our desk. Now, the Android app is still using the position that we originally set. Looks like it went a little off. One feature that I wanted to point out was the ability to set the object back to a location that we had already put it. So if we wanted to reset our AR object back to the tracking position, just hit Set to Track, and it'll snap to the ground. Now this gives us the ability to recenter our AR stage and then put it back to full scale if we want. And then now our virtual cameras are in a one-to-one spot in relation to our end display stage. So if we were to load our other location and then reload our cubes on screen location. So that's the basic AR features and visualization. Next, we're going to dive a little deeper into a workflow that you would actually do on a stage or within an indie setup where we're going to place a location marker and then place some camera markers live using the AR tracking for our end display node. I'll see you in the next one.